All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking about real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. Danny Seraphine, did he get a bum rap when he got booted from Chicago back in, I don't know, what was it, 1990? Stupid. All right, I've gone over this, and, as much as I think Tris, not Triz, but Tris Imboden was a good replacement. He was a very generic replacement. They wanted a guy who could do number one. In other words, just hit on beat. That first beat, they know where he's going to be at all times. That's what a timekeeper does. And even Lee Loughnane said, a drummer is supposed to keep time. That's it. A drummer is not supposed to be innovative, even though it worked really good on those early Chicago records. The reason you guys got into the Hall of Fame was not on the strength of the music you did in the 1980s. Although I was a big fan of David Foster, I liked all of it. But to kick a guy out of a band because you've got a trend that was soon to end, by the way. It ended when the grunge apocalypse happened, and then Chicago, for some reason, couldn't find a radio station that would play anything that they came out with. In fact, their record label decided to shelve an entire album with Mr. Tris on it. And again, this isn't a critique of Tris or a put down of Tris Imboden. He is a great drummer, but I think Danny Seraphine was a groundbreaking drummer, an innovative drummer, and someone who deserves respect. And he finally got some when the band got inducted into the Hall of Fame on the strength of his work from the time he was with the band. And by the way, he was with the band throughout the 1980s, right up until the end of the decade. 1989, the band had their biggest charting hit ever. It was called Look Away. In fact, if you go back and look at most year-end charts for the year 1989, Look Away is the top song for the entire year, according to Billboard and other charts. The reason is Ron Nevison, quite honestly. His production on that record is phenomenal. Diane Warren, who can write a song in between commercials that will go to number one, and Bill Champlin, who sings his ass off and becomes at that point, Bill Champlin became an arena rock singer, which was different from what he had been doing in the past. Chicago 19 made Bill Champlin into a different kind of singer, and again, thanks to Ron Nevison, who decided to use Champlin instead of Jason Scheff. Again, no deference to Jason Scheff, but this was a decision that the producer made. So, Danny Seraphine plays on all of this stuff, and he hits it out of the park. Again, he's given direction, he takes direction, he does what he needs to do. This person here says, well, I'm not absolutely sure if this is true, but my educated guess is that at a certain point in Chicago's long history, mid to late 80s, the band's direction changed, as did the type of music that was charting. Yes, all true. Drum machines and click tracks were in vogue, and I think Danny had a problem with keeping strict time in the studio. Therein losing beat one, that is. Again, you can hear Lee Loughnane talk about this in the Crockumentary. That's what Peter Cetera calls it. The sad part is that Danny was one of the most innovative drummers of his time. The early Chicago stuff that he played was truly great and won the praise of Buddy Rich, who called him the best drummer out there at the time. My opinion is that the premature loss of Terry Kath, who besides being a phenomenal guitarist, was the center and grounding force of the band, causing the group to begin to splinter. Keep in mind, after Terry's death, a lot of these guys just weren't functional. And Danny Seraphine, I think, was making some business decisions. By the way, Danny was kind of responsible for his own demise to some degree because he decided to bring in Foster. He was all for David Foster. He had no problem with Peter Cetera becoming a bigger presence in the group, all of which kind of spelt disaster by the end of the decade. Cetera leaves, and now we've got Jason Scheff and Bill Champlin. It's a different band. And I think, quite honestly, Danny Seraphine, who orchestrated some of this stuff, probably looks back and said, screw it, I should have just let the whole thing crash and burn, and we could have continued to be the innovative band we used to be on our own and doing, more complex music and so forth. But it's hard to argue when you've got chart-topping songs, you've got great songwriters, and you've got a vocalist in Cetera and in Bill Champlin who can hit it out of the park. I think Danny got a bum rap and was treated shabbily when he was forced out of the band. 100%. These guys in the documentary, they were saying things like, oh, if we didn't get rid of him, his negativity and his presence would have destroyed the band. I don't know. He had been with the band for 24 years at that point? 23 years, something like that. I don't think it would have broken up the band. And these guys, they had no idea what was coming. Danny Seraphine was a much better drummer for Chicago in the 1990s when organic music came back. Now, you had the grunge apocalypse, but you also had musicians getting rid of the click track, getting rid of the drum machine. There were no drum machines in the 90s. I mean, this would have been a perfect point for Danny to come back to the band, but they stuck with Mr. Number One. And again, I don't have a problem with Tris Imboden. I used to call him Triz. Call him Tris. Anyway, this goes on to say, I think Danny got a bum rap. If you want to hear a guy playing his ass off, just listen carefully to his playing on Make Me Smile. A drum performance for the ages, and as tasty as it gets. I'll take that any day over You're the Inspiration. So, again, Danny Seraphine, his value to this group was just, I don't know, I don't want to say as important as a Terry Kath or Robert Lamb, but I think Chicago, the sum of its parts, was an amazing amalgamation of talent, and these guys could pretty much do anything. Their live performances were legendary, and I think you need a drummer to accentuate that, and Danny did it every time. Danny at the Hall of Fame, too, was absolutely on fire. He was supercharged, and he wanted to show that audience that he still had plenty of gas left in the tank, and he was fantastic. I'm sure the band was like, oh no, he's going to steal the show. If you watch him up there, he's having a great time, and he's playing his butt off. So good for Danny Seraphine. It would be cool at this stage, too, since they're using the percussionist now in Chicago, because the drummer that I was speaking of, Tris Imboden, left the group mysteriously a couple years ago, right at the time that their last lead vocalist, Jeff Coffey, left the band. It was almost simultaneously. Almost like a coup, right? But it would be cool at this stage, hey, have Danny back. Who knows if we're going to have live gigs, though, right? I mean, because the case-demic will never end. It's just going to go on and on and on, and we're never going to get to the bottom of this. We're never going to get to the end, and live music is just going to die and so forth. So all I can say is I'm hoping maybe for reconciliation. It's probably too late. I don't know. Those bridges are probably all burned down. But Danny Seraphine, one of the great drummers of all time, and deserves some big respect.